take us through how we calculate our risks of exposure in these various environments.
So you've just got to look at these different environments. The biggest risks of exposure come from being indoors with a room that has poor air exchange and with lots of people. So whenever you put yourself into that situation, the risk just starts to elevate and go up. And if you get into that situation where you have people talking or yelling or singing, it just increases the risk because more of what comes out of your mouth, those respiratory droplets, more of those are expelled into the environment, which then just increases the opportunity for you to inhale them in.
And you mentioned in the piece you wrote about this, for example, that singing is the most dangerous of all of those things, that more comes out in singing than in just speaking.
Yeah, so just breathing, it's a fairly low level. Low talking, it increases by about tenfold. When you start yelling and start singing, you're looking at tenfold further, and you're aerosolizing those droplets even further. And so it creates a greater risk.
And you've also told us to factor in the amount of time we spend. So if we walked into a conference room with 3 people and we spent 3 minutes socially distanced from them, that's a much lower risk than sitting in that conference room with them for 3 hours breathing the same air.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You need to get exposed to the virus over a period of time to essentially get to a dose of virus in which you're going to be infected. And that's going to be different for each person, but it is time and exposure that becomes important. So minimizing the amount of time that you spend in those environments becomes really important in lowering your risk.
And what about restaurants? Because there's talk of restaurants opening now. What's the risk there?
Well, in restaurants, and depends on the ambience of the restaurant, you've got lots of people talking and conversing. So you have all the usual problems of transfer on objects and surfaces that people touch, those high contact surfaces. But you've also got the release of those droplets into the air to the people at your table. And depending on the airflow, the people at the table beside you. And the longer an infected person spends in that area, the more they can potentially release into the environment, which then increases the risk for everybody else who's in that restaurant.